Yo, what is up? My name is Sloth, and today I'm going to be bringing you a review of Makoto Shinkai's The Children Who Chase Lost Voices from Deep Below, or Hoshi wo Odo Kodomo. If you enjoy this video, consider supporting my channel by leaving a like and a comment down below. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy.
Hello, goodbye and hello. そして君のいないこの世界に Hello。
The fantasy genre has been done countless times, but few manage to captivate that feeling of pure childhood imagination that makes it genuinely exhilarating to watch unfold before your eyes. It requires an endless supply of creative vision jam-packed into every frame of animation in order to perfect, so mastering this aura is quite a formidable task and is accomplished by relatively few. And this daunting task was taken on by Shinkai, who's not really known for these type of stories. In fact, both of his most renowned films, The Garden of Words and 5 cm per second, are both romance dramas, and are rather uneventful in comparison to The Children Who Chase Lost Voices. So I was concerned whether he could pull it off or not, and today I'm going to be discussing how he did. The Children Who Chase Lost Voices takes place in a small, rural town where a girl named Asuna lives. Asuna enjoys spending her time in the forest neighboring her town, experimenting with an odd radio that her deceased father left behind, occasionally managing to pick up a strange, ominous melody for a short period, which strikes Asuna's curiosity. But one day, as she's walking to her favorite spot in the forest, she encounters a bizarre bear-like creature straight out of a Ghibli film which tries to maul her to death, only for her to be saved at the last second by a mysterious boy who's wearing a crystal similar to the one in her radio. This boy quickly becomes attached to Asuna, but eludes this mysterious world that he must return to. Then, one day, he went out to buy some cigarettes and milk from the corner store and never came back. I'm kidding. That never happened. He just fell off a cliff. The story of the Children Who Chase Lost Voices has admittedly been done before. In fact, it's been done quite a lot, but that doesn't go to say that it's bad. Not at all, actually. It's clear that this movie took some inspiration from some of Studio Ghibli's works, the most prominent of which being Spirited Away, but I think it mixed it enough to not come off as entirely cribbed. Without spoiling too much, this story involves Asuna's journey to the mysterious world of Agartha, a land very different from hers, with crazy foreign creatures, bizarre rules, and an absolutely stunning alien landscape, which is one of Shinkai's specialties. So, you can probably see the parallels, but trust me, it isn't a complete ripoff. Now, I'd like to talk about what I liked and didn't like about the overarching narrative, because this movie definitely isn't perfect. I think themes, for me, are one of the most crucial factors that I look for in stories, because they allow me to resonate deeper into the plot and characters with a more of a dynamic look. And this is one of those things I felt was done well in this film. We see the theme of loneliness slowly seep through Asuna as a character throughout the course of the movie, going from an almost perfect child in the beginning to a clearly broken and distressed human towards the end. Making this transition feel natural is really a challenging thing to do well, and I was surprised that it was done in a rather adroit manner. Another thing I would truly like to applaud is Shinkai's approach on show don't tell in this film. While this aspect is mainly used in more subtle dramas typical of his other works, I was really taken off guard seeing this in a fantasy adventure film. If you look carefully enough, you can find countless examples of facial expressions that foreshadow the true feelings and emotions of the characters, that are hidden behind their assumed personas. The most conspicuous of these would be the substitute teacher, who occasionally hints at his eventual psychological breakdown towards the end of the movie, despite of his calm, collected demeanor throughout the film. I can personally say that I'm a sucker for this kind of artistic direction, as it rewards the watcher for paying close attention to things that often don't play much relevance. Overall, I think this movie was well written for what it was trying to accomplish, but I do, however, have a few bones to pick with it. Pacing is one of those things that I'm usually pretty lenient with, because I tend to be a pretty patient person when it comes down to it, but I can say without a doubt that the pacing of this film is way too slow. The movement between plot points felt so clunky and unnecessarily drawn out for no good reason. This could be partly due to the movie clocks in at a whopping 2 hours long, and of those 2 hours, only one of them was spent in the world of Agartha. Not to say that the time outside of the world was pointless, but I felt it was dragged on for far too long. I think this problem could have easily been remedied if they cut down the time of the film by around 40 minutes, which would force them to speed up some of the portions of the movie, but wouldn't render the film too fast. The second and final thing I'd like to bring up is less of a concrete flaw as it is more of an abstract one. I felt as if this movie didn't quite fit together as it was intended to. It almost appeared as if Shinkai took inspiration from a number of places, but decided to pick out only select parts and pair them together in the hopes of them all working out. The most glaring example of this was his choice to give the movie a child-esque demeanor, but fitting it with much darker themes that didn't quite exactly feel natural. It's a bit like if I were to tell you a hard-hitting psychological thriller story, but the underlying theme was to believe in your friends and never give up. It just doesn't work. While this isn't the worst thing in the world in terms of storytelling, it is, however, slightly off-putting. So all in all, the story of this film is pretty good, but suffers from some pacing issues and a slight case of multi-personality disorder. If you haven't seen any Makoto Shinkai's past works, then what are you doing? Get on that shit, like right now. But if you have, then you'll know that his art is beyond stunning. I don't think there's any other animated film out there that has his level of sheer detail to it, and this movie is no exception. Every frame is worthy of being in an art museum on its own, and while I don't typically like to stress art and animation in reviews, I definitely think it's something noteworthy. Take this shot for example. You can't help but to just sit there in awe of this image. The insane amount of detail that goes into every individual cloud, the sheer vastness of the whole that takes up the whole horizon, the color palette that highlights how ominous yet beautiful this site is. Just by looking at the video that's been playing in the background this whole time, you can tell how much detail that both Comics Wave and Shinkai put into this film. I think the art is almost enough on its own to merit a watch for most people. As for the actual animation, it seems rather well done. It can occasionally feel a bit stiff at times, but nothing too jarring. One scene that does stick out is this rather short fight scene towards the end. When I first watched it, it heavily reminded me of Studio Bones' Sword of the Stranger, with its extremely fluid swings and heavy-hitting motions, and anything that reminds me of that movie in terms of animation is a plus in my books. But aside from that, nothing too amazing. When it comes to sound effects and animation in particular, they can be easily overlooked, usually playing a very subtle role and is usually never in the foreground of any artistic work of film. But I believe they can actually play a pretty vital role in the task of immersion, which in this case is one of the film's main objectives. Without the subtle pitter-patter of rain, what makes it soothing and comforting? Without the overwhelming boom of an explosion, what makes it, well, an explosion? What I'm trying to say is that they're needed, especially in this context, and I can happily say that the sound effects were pretty top-notch in this film. They managed to feel weighty enough when needed and subtle enough when wanted, and this is something I can really appreciate. However, the music is another story. I really do think this film lacked diversity in terms of the soundtrack. Almost every scene was fitted with an overwhelming orchestral track, and by the end of the movie, the sense of power and intensity that comes with these kind of songs was lost entirely. While this isn't a huge issue, it is one that was kind of disappointing. I think usually one of the most charming parts of a fantasy adventure film is its soundtrack, so I was a bit underwhelmed in that department, but it can be looked past to a certain degree. Really, if it came down to it and I was asked whether someone should watch this movie or not, I would definitely go with yes. Although it has its fair share of problems revolving around pacing and a few more technical ones, The Children Who Chase Lost Voices from Deep Below is a great watch, if not for the art alone. And while I'm not the biggest fan of the numerical rating system because it has far too many subjectable variables that make it ambiguous from person to person, I gave Hoshi wo Odo Kodomo a 7 out of 10 rating. If you want to know what my rating system entails, head on over to my Mal where you can find all my ratings alongside their meanings. And for some alternate recommendations if you enjoyed this film, I would point you towards Studio Ghibli's Spirited Away, which has many of the same elements but does things this movie tried to in a more successful manner, and Makoto Shinkai's most famous work, 5 centimeters per second, which is a romance slice-of-life movie that has arguably even better art and storytelling than this film. So this concludes my review on The Children Who Chase Lost Voices from Deep Below. If you happen to find this video entertaining and or informative, consider supporting my channel by leaving a like and a comment down below. And until next time, thanks for watching.